The Muggle Death Eater and His Daughter by Great 78. Chapter 45. Breakthroughs and Binges. Death Eaters were hurrying around the drawing room of Malfoy Manor, packing supplies of potions and weapons at a panic-stricken pace. Elves were offering tea and sandwiches to the frenzy of distracted wizards. Bellatrix was in a corner, standing angrily over the badly injured Rodolphus, who appeared to be recovering from several cuts and welts, as well as a prolonged Cruciatus curse. Bella was haranguing him for his apparent role in the break-in at Gringotts. In the 20 minutes or so since he'd left, things had apparently gone even more to shit, Lucius thought. Narcissa rushed in from the adjoining parlour. Lucius went to her, crushing her in an embrace. "Sissa, what do we know of Draco and Hermione?" he added, his eyes flitting to Richard.
"I've not been able to reach him by Flu, darling. He wasn't in the Slytherin common room, but it might have been because classes were going on, you know," Narcissa said comfortingly, exchanging a quick glance with Richard, who nodded. She was being truthful. They had received no word via Flu, and Draco had not been in the Slytherin common room with most of the other Slytherins, but both she and Richard had recently received word from Hermione. She had written to Richard and Tonks to say that the Carrows had called for classes to be cancelled that afternoon, and for students to remain in their common rooms. This was an unusual direction from the Carrows, and at a meaningful glance from Snape, Hermione and Draco could tell that something was happening. They'd sent a message to Dumbledore's army via enchanted coin to meet in the Room of Requirement instead.
"All right, so we're awaiting the Dark Lord's orders, then?" Richard confirmed. Jugson appeared in the doorway of the drawing room, hurrying over to meet up with Richard. The younger wizard spoke as he approached. "I just spoke with Pettigrew in the foyer. Apparently the Dark Lord has misplaced his replacement wand." Jugson clamped his lips together to avoid them curling into a smile. Inspired by the Dark Lord's love of the McDonald's straw, Jugson had been trying to work out a licensing and cross-promotional deal with the chain for the last month. He and Sirius were working to create a Fixer Elixir branded magic straw that changed colours when exposed to cold liquids. They'd be available only at Mackey's for a limited time, and he thought they were getting close to inking the deal. He only hoped he'd live to see it done.
"Well, we can't go anywhere without it," Richard agreed with barely suppressed mirth. "I myself brought mine."
He patted his pocket, carefully. Jugson looked around, taking in the frenetic pace of the wizards and witches around them, everyone frantically running around gathering supplies, practicing spells, fumbling with their things. Perhaps bringing samples of Fixer Elixir's new variety, Unhinged Binge, wasn't the best idea for today. Everyone seems slightly manic.
"No matter," trilled Narcissa. "I'm sure they'll be fine."
Yaxley threw up in a corner onto Roll's cloak. Roll turned angrily and hexed the other wizard, turning him into a gelatinous mush.
"Well, perhaps not Yaxley,"
Narcissa finished brightly. After an exhaustive search of the manor, in which a house elf finally managed to locate the straw under the table in one of the medium-sized dining rooms, the group was ready to apparate into Hogsmeade. The Dark Lord raised his hands for everyone's attention. With the greatest effort, the crowd stopped their frenetic movements, their pulses still beating a tattoo in their ears.
"Our hour of glory has come. You shall bombard the gates. Besiege the castle from all sides, if you can. Take no prisoners," Voldemort called to his followers in a high, cold tone.
Bellatrix spoke up. My lord, it is our privilege to fight for you. Will you do me the honour of accompanying me into battle, as Rudolphus is no longer able-bodied?" She leered at him.
"No! Recent events have indicated that Nagini and I must remain safe, separate from the fight. But rest assured, I will fight tonight. I shall meet Harry Potter face to face, and end his miserable existence once and for all."
Voldemort turned in a circle, waving his replacement wand high over his head, a promise of victory to come.
"We shall not be defeated. We shall prevail. Tomorrow we shall rule the wizarding world completely."
Voldemort turned on the spot, with Nagini's magically conjured cage in hand, and disapparated. The witches and wizards in the room hopped up on unhinged binge, the new special blend of fixer elixir that was triple the usual caffeine and sugar, practically vibrated in hysterical excitement. There was a rush of people running pell-mell into each other, until they all remembered that they were meant to be apparating, not fluing into Hogsmeade. There was a flurry of cracks as the majority of them disapparated, leaving only Richard, Lucius, Narcissa, Jugson, Yaxley, and Rodolphus. The former four eyed the latter two dubiously. "You think they'll be all right to stay here?" Jugson asked the others uncertainly. Narcissa answered him,
"Let me take care of this. Tiffy!"
In an instant the adorable little elf appeared, smiling up at her mistress. "Yes, mistress?"
"Tiffy, we're going to be out for a while, but these two—"
She gestured to the still shaking Rodolphus and the jellied Yaxley.
"Are feeling a bit ill. Would you mind terribly watching after the two of them?"
Tiffy looked curiously at Yaxley, but her gaze turned downright impish at the sight of Rodolphus. "I can take care of them, mistress," she replied with a ghost of a grin, hurrying away. Narcissa looked after her uneasily. It was well known within the household that Tiffy, of all the elves, had a real problem with anything related to Bellatrix. "Right. Where shall we go, then?" Richard asked, eyeballing Lucius, who had been looking more doubtful in the last hour than Richard had ever seen him before. Lucius had been experiencing a bit of an existential crisis for a little while now. Earlier in the Granger home, he had peeked out into the foyer in time to see the affectionate parting between Richard and Linda. Turning back into the living room, where he had spent many hours talking to Richard over a plate of Oreos and Muggle beer, it dawned on Lucius that he had learned a lot in this place, even if he had not realized it at the time. His eyes had caught on the unusual family photos that did not move. It was clear to Lucius that Richard truly loved his family, and his life here in this dreadfully simple little home. It was a bit hard to comprehend, but this primitive existence, with its singular dining room and lack of attentive house elves and talking portraits, comforted the Muggle man. Lucius was realizing more and more as he spent time with Richard that pleasures in life did not always need to come from power, or influence, or family bloodlines, or wealth. It was a hard realization for a wizard like Lucius, but as he thought more about it, he knew that this epiphany was a long time coming. It was a revelation he'd been approaching for years. And that was why, here and now, in Malfoy Manor, when Richard asked where they should go, Lucius didn't have a good answer. Because the correct answer was to Hogsmeade. The answer, according to the will of Lord Voldemort, was to enter the frenzy of battle and fight for their master. That was the answer he would have given, without question, only a few years before. But more and more, the answer had gradually changed and shifted. It had occurred without him even realizing it. And now Lucius was no longer certain what the correct answer was. Because if he followed what his mind told him, what his sense of obligation and service told him, he would do just that. He would apparate into Hogsmeade and storm the castle, searching it room by room. He would do everything he could to locate and capture Harry Potter, and kill everyone the young, scar-headed wizard held dear. But if he followed his heart, then he would fight for his son and his wife, and for the friends they held dear. It was clear to him that Draco loved the young Granger witch, not because she was the daughter of a powerful, dark wizard, or because she had been raised to spearhead Voldemort's vision for the future, or because she was trying to infiltrate Potter's organization and report back secrets to Voldemort. In all the time Lucius had known Hermione, she'd provided no secrets about Potter. She'd professed few ambitions towards darkness, other than that frightful jar business, to which Lucius had to give his begrudging respect, really. She had not killed Dumbledore. Yes, she'd thrown that loud fire thing at Bellatrix in the Department of Mysteries, but, truthfully, Lucius had fantasized about doing much worse to Bellatrix over the years. Hermione's words might seem menacing. She had called him a worm once, after all. But her actions, at least towards his family, had not been menacing, really. It seemed that Draco loved the girl for who she was. And whilst Linda was clearly dangerous, Lucius also knew that she had become a good friend to Narcissa. He knew the women spent time together often. The shopping bags from Muggle London, hidden in the back of their closets, was clear evidence of this. He would do what he could to protect the boy and Narcissa, no matter where they stood in the fight, and the same would hold true for the people they cared about. Bloodlines, lineage, family status, what did that truly matter if your own family hated everything that stood for? Because it was clear now to Lucius that they did, in fact, hate many of the decisions he had made, regarding both Richard and Voldemort. Narcissa and Draco had always told him he was being ridiculous about Richard. What if he had been? He looked hard at the man in front of him. The man was about to enter a magical battle with no wand. Was this truly what Richard wanted? "Richard, may I speak to you privately?" Lucius murmured. Richard nodded. The two men left Narcissa and Jugson and stepped into the next room. Lucius paced a bit before finally speaking. "I'm not sure that I, in good conscience, can enter this fight today. I'm not certain that either of us should." Richard eyed him carefully. "What brings you to that conclusion, Lucius?" Lucius sighed heavily. "I know that you are the Dark Lord's cousin, and that you very well might kill me for expressing these thoughts. But I have come to realize that perhaps I have pledged my allegiance wrongly." "In what way?" Richard asked. "In that I do not believe that
Narcissa or Draco wish to fight for the Dark Lord, and I do not know that I wish to fight. For the Dark Lord, I mean," Lucius finished awkwardly.
Richard cleared his throat.
Geez.
He crossed the room to Lucius, who looked fearfully at the Muggle man. Was he about to be killed for his insurrection? But Richard only stuck out a hand to shake. Slowly, tentatively, Lucius placed his hand in the other man's and shook it.
"Okay, then," Richard said. "Well, if we aren't fighting for the Dark Lord, we should still be there to protect our families. We might still be needed."
"Okie dokie," said Lucius in relief. Richard looked sharply at the wizard.
"Have you always used that phrase? I've never heard you say that before."
No. I overheard our elf, Eustace, saying it to another elf once, and I rather liked it." Richard nodded solemnly.
"Then, okie dokie."
The two men joined Jugson and Narcissa, who had been in furtive conversation. "Jugson, the fact that you are still here indicates to me that you are wavering in your steadfastness to the Dark Lord. Am I correct?" Lucius asked quietly as they approached. From behind the blonde wizard, Richard nodded to the others to indicate that it was all right to speak more freely.
"You are right. To be perfectly honest, I have become involved with someone on the other side of the battle, and I do not wish to fight in it. However, I plan to go and offer my protection to this person."
"Merlin help us all," Lucius thought.
"Very well. Richard, Jugson, and I will go into Hogsmeade and remain close to the battle, but, Narcissa, I do not plan to fight, and I think it best if you stay here to remain safe."
Narcissa smoothed down her robes and drew herself up to her full height. "I also have friends on the other side of this battle, Lucius, and I plan to be there to support them, to fight for them, if necessary." Lucius inhaled sharply, then nodded. The world was turning, spinning off its axis, and he was no longer certain which way was up. But one thing was clear. The epicenter of it all was at Hogwarts, so they must go.
"The back room of the 3 broomsticks,"
Lucius proposed, and the others nodded. He placed one hand on Richard's arm and the other on Narcissa's. Richard did the same to Jugson, who in turn grasped arms with Narcissa. The 3 magical people twisted, and in a whirlwind of compression and space, the 4 of them disapparated. Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Muggle Death Eater by Great78.